Welcome to the Warrior Gamer Headquarters podcast. Lieutenant Colonel Ken Crigliano, your co-host. Welcome to the Warrior Gamer Headquarters podcast, episode 8. And 8 is very close to the infinity sign. And so this is going to be infinitely better than all the other podcasts that you could possibly be listening to right now. So glad you're here for those folks who tune in. So I think Bilal has won the short straw on the topics to discuss today and has actually some really good and timely categories of information to share and to get me and April's, opinions on.
So today I was thinking we would talk a little bit about resilience. Why am I thinking about resilience? Okay, so last episode we talked a little bit about New Year's resolutions and how they start and how people tend to fall out from them because they're not really interested. But then there's some of you, the really special few, and I say few because it really is few, who actually want to go through with your resolutions. And you try, and then somewhere down the line, it takes a downturn, and that downturn frustrates you. You feel like giving up, and sometimes you do. Maybe you've been in this position. So today, I just wanted to ask yourself, and for those of you in the comments section, you can go ahead and continue the discussion there. What do you do to bounce back? Anyone?
So, April, I think you're like the perfect person because you're like the happiest, most smiling person I've ever seen.
I think bounce back is so important. I mean, Mike Tyson is famous for saying everybody's got a plan till they get punched in the face.
True.
I think part of it is just, knowing that those punches are going to let you get up stronger than you were before you got knocked down. And I'm thinking about all of those who are counting on you and all of those who have been in your corner all along. That helps me. And also thinking about how, you've come this far. What would you would throw so much away if you stopped now, if you didn't, face that frustration and get up and push through it anyway. There's a fantastic book I've been reading by James Clear called Atomic Habits. And he says the same thing. Basically, it's not the great big giant things that knock us down. It's failing to do the little things every day, making that 1% better each day and lining things up that you can succeed at and not beating yourself up when you do get frustrated. You've got to be your advocate, your strongest, your most supportive advocate for yourself. And I think students, like I know Bilal, we're both going through school still. I think students often face they escalate the size of the challenge before them. We're not like Ken in the military with lives on the line, but that one test feels like it's going to collapse our whole world.
Yeah.
Keeping things in perspective helps.
Yeah, I think it, the nervous systems don't know when there's lives on the line. So when you're taking the test, it feels as though there is a lot, your life is on the line, your reputation, all the hard work. The number one human driver is loss aversion. So it's the number one motivating factor in humans. And so when you put in all this effort, you put in all this pressure on yourself, it can be like, let me just cut my losses now versus putting in more and more effort and then be a greater failure. And, when I talk to my airmen about perspective on things, I was in a very rough assignment where there was nothing around and everyone's like, this place sucks. I'm like, no, you suck. You bring the party. Like wherever you're at, there you are. And so I tell them, there's a phrase that says 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, right? And so the perspective is you took a step forward. You didn't do 2 steps back. And so it's just trying to orient your perspective, I think is a huge contributing factor to like feeling like Bilal said, feeling like I guess the word is disenfranchised, and a lot of people may not know what that means, but just disempowered, from moving forward, right?
Right, but there is something I want to, I don't know if I'm using this phrase correctly, playing the devil's advocate here. So you mentioned 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, but unfortunately, the way the mind works is that we're more programmed to remember the negative. And so while practically, logically, it was 1 step forward, it feels as though we went 1 step back, 2 steps back. Despite it literally being on paper, we have moved forward. Right? So the feeling that we get in our brain is juxtaposed by the practicality. So what can we do to reconcile these two?
So I don't know if you want to go, April, on that one.
No, go first, Ken.
Yeah. So in sports, man, I mean, this is so big because I think the single most important thing I ever did in my training, because if you think of like how much time I've got to put in the pool, on the bike, on the run, in the weights, core work, nutrition, I mean, everything's got to be dialed in, and it's so much. And there's so many 2 steps back. Even if I take 4 or 5 steps forward, it's so tempting to look at those 2 steps back. And the number one thing I did was create workouts and expectations that were unbelievably easy to do. So I would go to, especially in the pool, which swimming is the hardest thing any human can do. I will tell you that. I've done every sport and it's just the hardest. And I'd go in there and my workouts, I'd be like I can do this in my sleep. But that's the workout. Do the workout, and I'd blast it, and everyone was a step forward. Everyone was a step forward. Everyone step forward. And I don't know if that makes sense to people, but if you make sure that you can win, then you will focus on the wins and not the losses. That's my take, April. I don't know if it jives with what you're about to say.
It jives 100% with what I'm about to say. And of course, I'm a giant bookworm, so I got another book for you. It's called Limitless by Jim Kwik. And what he does in that book is he outlines the importance of basically cohesively moving 3 points forward at the same time. So that 1 step forward, 2 steps back is usually a function of having 2 things in line versus 3 things in line. And the 3 things are head, heart, and hands, which he also calls mindset, motivation, and method. So if you understand how you're going to do something, you have to take the effort to understand why you want to do it. And then you also have to take the effort to make sure that it resonates with you and that you know how you're going to do it. So I think that whole trap of feeling just depressed about, hitting 98% versus 100%, it's a trap. And when you start off, like Ken said, if you start off with something that you know is doable and let that build and do the next most logical step, and not try to look too far ahead of yourself, you definitely make more progress. But having all 3 of those things, head, hand, heart, in line and moving in union with those things rather than against those things, I think that's a great way to avoid frustration and keep your smile.
Do you see cool. Jim Kwik's website here?
Yeah, fantastic. Okay.
So for
Did
the
I
folks,
get it wrong?
No, okay. I was gonna say something to Bilal, like she came way more prepared than we did because she's reciting pages of books. So this is now one of our sponsors for our events is nucalm. And they play the opening music for when people are walking out. They also have the neuroacoustics. They actually partnered with Jim Kwik. And you can go into Jim Kwik's website and go into his Limitless program, and they actually play he actually plays the neuroacoustics while he reads his books and his teachings to you. And it's very, very effective. So I'm so excited that you mentioned him, because he is just one of the biggest influences on mindset, motivation, and just being the best you. So here's the website, which is pretty cool. I'll put it in the YouTube show notes for folks too.
So for those who don't know, And I'm saying this because I don't know. Who is Jim Kwik?
So he's an amazing person. I've found I use him when I so one of my part of my job is helping college kids who've never been away from home acclimate to college life. And he's got fantastic brain training. So he can actually recite like hundreds of numbers forward and backward after only hearing them once. His whole stitch is train your brain first, never miss a brain day. He always wears a t-shirt that's got a brain on it. And he's got all sorts of really, really practical advice for how to make your mind stronger, more focused, how to get through tough challenges. Like you said, frustration. He's got a whole unit on how to break through frustration in Limitless. So his book was on sale on Amazon for like $1.99 yesterday. So I sent it to all my students and told them buy on the Kindle version. But he's a geek like me, so he loves the X-Men and Comic-Con and all of that. So he's got YouTube videos that are fantastic that can introduce you to him. But he's really, really one of those people who walk their talk, not just like a guru, as it were. He's got a book that doesn't help, that sits on people's shelf. He calls it shelf help. He's actually got an action plan.
And he's like one of the best kinds, because he had, if I remember right, and I just caught a couple snippets, but he had a brain injury or an accident that hurt his ability to learn like I did. And so it's really, really cool, because people like listen to these folks and they're like, no, this guy was like born with it. Society, especially in the West, they're still convinced that you're born with some kind of magic potions, and like this dude like fought his way back to where he couldn't remember like a few words to like hundreds and hundreds of numbers. So that's inspirational.
He fell down the stairs and he actually was 100, I think he said 114 pounds, couldn't recite anything. The teachers called him the boy with the broken brain.
That's right.
Third grade. And he just, he's got a wonderful comeback story for any of our veterans who are out there coming back from paralysis, coming back from a lot of physical damage. Know that your brain can reroute. And that's pretty much what he said, that the doctors didn't give him any chance of getting much better. And he rerouted. Lots of people did that they don't talk about it very much. The actor who played Legolas again, I'm a big geek, as you know, in Lord of the Rings, he also had a life-altering back injury where they told him he would never, ever walk again. And he came back from that. And with brain practices and with just hard work through the physical therapy, he bounced back. Same with Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee had a life-changing back injury. That's when he wrote his books. That most people don't know that unless you read his books, but he was flat on his back for 6 months before doing Enter the Dragon. And his just that willpower and that mind and that refusal to take a no got him back in the shape where he could do Enter the Dragon. But he too had the confidence issues, which his wife talks about in her book, because he got knocked down so low with that injury. So coming back from injuries is, I think, one of the most, and again, of course, you can speak to this, I think it's one of the most rewarding and the most epic things a person can do. And finding your way back and sharing your story, I think that's just fantastic. And that's what Jim Kwik is doing.
Yeah, it's we're touching on so many of our previous episodes too, on like motivation and in coming back from setback and everything. And I think I had a bunch of thoughts when you were talking, but one of the things that I tell people that is not very popular is that inspiration is dangerous, because what happens is in our society, we reward victimization. And so, the news, if it bleeds, it leads. You will notice, if you really start to pay attention, especially to your friends and family and people that you may subscribe to, if you're not coming back from something, it's very difficult for you to justify your attention getting because it's not inspirational. And so I do tell people to be very, very, very protective on trying to be inspirational, because you will self-sabotage over and over again to become inspirational over and over again. And I actually saw this in myself, where once, I got back up on top, my story dissipates. I'm not newsworthy anymore. I'm just another guy, doing my thing. And so I do try to mention that it can be a little bit of, I don't want to say an addiction, but it can be a little bit of, I guess it's just a little dangerous too. So you just want to be a little careful. But if you use it to inspire you, like The Rock and like Jim Kwik, and, I try myself, is like, look where I came from. You can do it too. And I keep going up. I think that's really good.
That's fantastic. And I think that's the goal. Like, people who just stick to that story of pain and do nothing but repeat it, that's where they're going to stay, because what you think about is what you live. And I think that's, in many cases, making a choice not to talk about it and keep going anyway is a viable option. And I think there's so much to be, to be learned about yourself. They always say that's the biggest challenge right now. That's what school is all about. Even though you're learning how to do sutures in school below, you're actually learning about who you are and what your identity is. And again, Atomic Habits, that's the only way you change, is you change your identity by saying, I'm the type of doctor who gets stitches perfect. I'm the type of athlete who can swim 5 miles and not even think about it. I'm the type of, like, your identity changes, not your will, not your power. It's what you believe about yourself that makes you happy about it, or ready to change, or ready to inspire others, I think.
Yeah, there is a huge dosing of advice that you just said, which is the probably most powerful, most effective thing you can do in life is to say that this is who I am. This is my identity. And like when Bruce Lee was on his back, I've had I've clawed myself back from my injury, and I have been like bedridden, and I've done all this stuff, and my identity was like, no, I'm among the best. And I would get in the pool, and I would be slow as molasses and just go, well, this is not my identity. And I'd get back in the pool until it came back. And it was so important, because when I saw other things that wasn't my identity, because I didn't know that was a trick, I would never come back. And so I use that right now, where it's like, even at work, like today, I was like, no, I am the kind of guy that I have, the standard is here, and we're going to meet that standard, and I'm not going to negotiate. And it's like this, the Force, Star Wars Force just like permeates everyone around me, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, all right, okay. But you had a huge dose of advice right there that I just wanted to make sure that people, caught as it flew by.
Yeah, there are plenty of examples of that too. Actually, a very up and coming, I wouldn't say up and coming, because it's actually quite famous within the music universe, especially for those of you who've come from rock, metal, and have transitioned to other types of music. This is a band, Polyphia. Not sure if anyone's heard. Very interesting band. I would look them up. All right, so they have a very flavorful style of music, typically no vocals unless they have a guest vocalist, very instrumental focus, typically more math rock, math metal. So, odd time signatures, very unique flavors to their music. So they're a guitarist, the main guitarist, I should say, Tim Henson is his name. His name is just being thrown around like everywhere nowadays. He's known as one of the greats. He's pretty young. He's in his late 20s. And he comes from a musical background. I mean, his family used to play music and stuff. And when he picked up a guitar, there was an interview I watched where he said, I'm training with the intention of becoming the world's best. And he's at the very top. If you listen to some of their music, you'll be amazed by what you can do with the guitar. I mean, the kinds of things that he was doing wasn't really possible 5-10 years ago, or maybe it was, but nobody has truly discovered that talent. He effectively expanded the frontier of what guitar playing is like. And now he's up there with the greats like Steve Vai. So that tells you a lot. Like, if you have the intention, if you have the mindset of saying, I am going to be the best, it's more likely than not going to happen. But again, that kind of comes back to what April was saying. You got to have your mind, body, and spirit with you. They all have to be in sync, because if one of them is not, then there's always a backtrack. And if that backtrack is super easy to go on, I mean, it's downhill, right? So anybody can do that. But if your mindset is only uphill, I'm going to go for the very best, I'm going to go for the summit, and I'm going to keep going, you're probably going to succeed.
And I think one of the things, go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, just real quick. Who is that, just for folks who may have missed it?
Tim Henson. You can't miss a very young looking dude, always has his hair kind of spiked up. He's got a neck tattoos. He's got a lot of tattoos, especially the neck tattoos, very prominent.
Okay.
If you're into fitness and calisthenics, you might know a guy named Chris Harry. I kind of resembles him in a way.
I saw the video that's what I was going to say. I saw the video with Chris Harry and him.
Yes,
and Chris Harry also has another fantastic, he dropped out of high school. He fought to get to see his kid. And he's got millions of viewers on YouTube now. And he can do, Ken, you got to see this push-up he can do. He can do a push-up without touching his legs.
Oh, that's called a planche. I wish I tried for 2 years.
He's on a different level.
It's crazy.
Incredible.
I think
one of the
both of those guys challenge each other.
Oh, sorry, we're talking at the same time.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was going to say both of those guys, Chris Harrier, and they both their challenge is their own record. It's same with Prince. I can't say guitar playing without mentioning Prince. Practiced every day for 50 years. Their challenge is I'm going to get better than I was. Not I'm going to get better than this guy, but I'm going to be as creative as I possibly can. And I love both of them. They had a fantastic video together.
So is this him?
This is him, yeah.
Wow. Interesting. All right. Well, I'll put the link in the show notes as well.
You can pull up Chris Harrier too if you have it.
Yeah, the resemblance.
They look so much alike. And that crazy, what did you call it? A plank? He does upside down push-ups.
PLANCHE.
He used to do capoeira on the high bars, and he injured himself doing that. He landed flat on his back doing that and knocked.
Is it her? Heria?
Yeah, Chris Harrier, that's him. And
this
is a guy who looks like an in real life Tekken character. I mean,
I know this.
Tekken, this guy's built. I mean, he's something else. I always tell people, if you're getting into calisthenics, be careful, because this guy's beginner workouts are your advanced workouts.
Yeah.
I mean, he is on another level. So, but definitely his videos are what started me off on calisthenics. And so that's how I got my interest, actually.
Yeah, I shared him with my Kung Fu teacher. I was like, this is amazing.
Man, who would have thought I'd be name dropping Chris Harry and Tim Henson in the same podcast episode? Go figure.
Well, it's body weight workouts. I trained for years, body weight and without a gym, and I was able to make it to a couple world championships. So these are totally legit workouts, and they're extremely hard. And actually, I have this workout book from the 1910s. I think it's 1916 or something. And they didn't have weights and all this other nonsense. I mean, it was okay, hold your hand. This is the bicep curls. Hold your hand down and put it go for 30 seconds. And and then and these people were getting big and ripped. And so, I mean, this is legitimate stuff. And dude's a beast. I can do the flagpole pretty well, and I can do a oh gosh, what's that called now? I forget. It's like a reverse planche, but I cannot do the one on the ground. That's unbelievable to me.
He does. He eats a keto diet too. Mostly, he doesn't eat any processed food. He does recipes. He's got a cute 9-year-old. I've been sort of stalking him. I was researching on a podcast. There we go. But he does look like he walks straight out of the anime, so he could be on Crunchyroll.
Oh yeah, 100%.
That's funny.
But yeah, these are folks who kind of train to be the best. And the thing is, if you don't, there's a downside. Like if your mind, body, and spirit are not kind of in line, you will be prone to the gurus. You know what I mean by the gurus, or those influencers. I'm going to give an example, and this is really just to make this concept stick. Nothing against veganism, by the way, but this has to do with veganism. So this is actually a story about my cousin. He was studying in a neuroscience class in Canada. Some 200 students in the class. The professor was a vegan, always talked about it, right? Now, when you're in university, you're 18, 19 years old, you're susceptible to influence, pretty much, yeah. And so what happened at the end of that class, maybe like a quarter semester, so we're talking like 10 to 15 weeks, 10 students became vegan. You'd be amazed if even one student became vegan. 10 students.
It has it has very, very compelling reasons. And we are mainly vegan, but we do some meats just a few times a week. But yeah, there was a show on Netflix that I show people where they have someone, they take his blood before he eats like a burger. And then like 2 hours after he eats a burger, they like take the blood out and they show the differences. And that to me, I was like, oh, that is, I do not want to do that to myself. But I know one of my best buds, Robbie Ballinger, he's vegan and he ran across the whole damn country. And he even outran a Tesla just a few months ago as a publicity event. And Rich Roll. I mean, there's a lot of them, but I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hijack. I don't know where you were going with that, but
no, what I was going with that is simply that you are susceptible to influence. It can be good influence. It can also be bad. I gave an example that was mostly good. I feel like a lot of people could benefit from a diet that is less processed, and veganism tends to lend itself to that. Doesn't always, but tends to lend itself to that. So the point being really is that, if you don't have the conviction, you are going to get influenced. Sometimes that's for better, sometimes that's for worse, sometimes somewhere in between. You got to be really careful.
So I have a funny story for you about vegans. I was listening to the Tim Ferriss interview when he interviewed James Clear from Atomic Habits, and James Clear said the way he got so many followers was he thought about what people talk about the absolute most, and he was like, CrossFit and being a vegan. So what I'm gonna do is reach out to all the influencers who are excited about being a vegan and who are excited about CrossFit, and let them promote my book amongst their audiences. And that's how he got so many followers on his email list. Both of them were talking about the importance of it, not just being on like an Instagram or a Twitter, but actually having your own podcast, having your own email list, doing a newsletter, pushing out content that's valuable that people can actually change their lives from.
Yeah. Do you think that's still like a viable life path, or do you think we're just so saturated with stuff? No, too hard to answer.
You're gonna have to re-ask that question.
Yeah. So if someone has knowledge they want to impart and they want to make either a living or cash off of that, do you think there's any chance in heck that they can fight against the Jim Quicks and these Tim guys, or are we at a saturation point where there's just no way, or do you think there's still like hope for folks?
I think there's still hope for folks. One of the things that's happening, and I can't pronounce his name, I'm embarrassed to say, but the guy who started Mind Valley has been bringing a lot of these voices together and sort of curating them. Same with the guys from, mindvalley.com, and same with the guys from like School of Success. They bring a lot of, Bob Proctor, a lot of these voices, these how do you get yourself to do what you should be doing voices together. And I think with those platforms coming up, that can really help the people who are transformers reach larger audiences. Louise Hay started that with Hay House years ago. She started a business when she was 60, a publishing business when she was 60, and just hit all the charts, doing all of the same type of stuff that these guys are talking about. So yeah, I definitely think there's room for new voices, especially since everybody hears differently. Like Jim Kwik resonates with me, but someone else might resonate with an 18-year-old, or like they have a different way of talking. So I think there'll always be room for a new voice and a new delivery.
Yeah, that's a
Interesting.
good point. Yeah, 'cause especially since we're at a point where while it may seem saturated with general content, I think specialized content is on the rise. If you notice how technology has allowed openings for different things in different places, a lot of different things. I mean, we're talking just education alone, because that's kind of more within my specialty. If you look at the different types of YouTubers, influencers within the education sphere, I mean, there's so many different types. And that's just for one branch of education. For example, in medicine, there's a whole laundry list plus of different types of influencers, all talking about different things, from non-traditional students to students who came in at a really young age, to people who wanted to pursue one career path but ended up on another. I mean, there's so much variation within one career path. It's not as generalized anymore as it was maybe back in the day. And so now that technology is kind of opening up these doors for different careers, different hobbies, different lifestyles, we're going to get influencers within those different specialties, lifestyles, hobbies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's always going to be a niche, right? And so all you're going to have to do at that point, I mean, I say this as if it's simple, is you're effectively going to have to build your brand around that niche. So if your brand is, I'm a 35-year-old student, I'm going back into undergrad after 10 years of XYZ, well, then that's your brand. And that might reach out to a large subset of people, because that's becoming a more popular option, where people are, instead of just going to college right away, they're doing a job, they're getting a family, they're getting settled before they go into college. That's becoming more popular, right? And so who's leading the charge on that? Well, I don't know. Maybe somebody is, maybe somebody in the comments section could share. But if there is somebody who's leading the charge on that, and they put themselves out there, they rise in popularity, right? As with anything else.
I got it wrong, Ken. It's Lewis Howes for School of Greatness, not School of Success.
Oh, I'm familiar with that.
I would have been buzzed out of Jeopardy. School of Greatness for 200.
All right. So
yeah. Well, I'm looking at the Google. It says, when a career-ending injury left elite athlete and professional football player Lewis Howes, help. Is it Lewis Howes?
I think it's Howes. I think he says Howes.
I am bad with names. Lewis Howes, out of work and living on his sister's couch, he decided he needed to make a change for the better. So now look at this, career-ending injury for an athlete. Mm-hmm. Whereas where Jim Kwik, it was a childhood brain injury. Like, these are two different things, right? Different stages of life. So it's going to manifest differently as far as recovery. We saw Jim Kwik, he was talked about how people were calling him names in school, mm-hmm. and he had to overcome that. Whereas as an athlete, I imagine your stresses are different. So you're playing at a high level and now you're going down, and that drop, I can imagine, can be very stressful for some. I like to tell people, no two broken arms are the same. If I break my arm, I'm not going to be happy, right? But if an athlete breaks their arm, they're especially not going to be happy, because they have maybe a scholarship, maybe athletes is their job, for example. So that could affect them more. Right. And so it affects people in different ways. And so their perspective, I believe, is valuable.
So are we able to merge sort of what April was talking about, which is to get popular, talk about what's being talked about, and esports? And so I know I've been looking off the screen a little bit, but I've been I'm curious on who's talking about things that are being talked about in esports. And I mean, some of the Score esports channel, they posted a thing yesterday and they have 69,000 views, and it's called The Rise and Fall of Esports Greatest Players. And so, Bilal, you're way more connected in this particular industry than either of us, at the player level, maybe. But if I wanted to, or if someone's out there and they're listening to our podcast and they're a good gamer, but they really want to have their own podcast or have some content on, like Mind Valley, but it's about esports. What do you think would be like the best practice or the best approach for someone like that? Because I think there's going to be a lot of people. I don't see any esports stuff on this Mind Valley thing, by the way.
Mhm.
So I don't know. Someone might be like, "Oh my God, first to market, I'm there, Ken."
Right.
Well, I think that's a little tough to answer because I feel like it's going to be very different depending on your background with gaming, right? If somebody values, for example, in my case, I'm not a professional gamer, nor have I ever been, but I am somebody who plays video games regularly while still doing my academics, right? So that might be valuable to some people. Perhaps I could, if I were there, I could start a course on how I managed to separate my academic and my gaming life in a way, so that they don't intertwine, so that I don't get distracted. That might be something, right? If you feel and genuinely feel, I think this is the big thing. If you genuinely feel that you have used video games as a tool for self-improvement and you've seen that, then you can go ahead and share that. I don't think you should go about, oh, I'm just good at this game and here's how you can get good at this game too. That's coaching. That's a little different. If you want to become a coach, if you're a high-level player, top 0.001%, and you want to just tell people how good you are and how they can become good, be a coach. But if you're talking about what values, what life lessons I've learned, maybe start a podcast, maybe start a course. I mean, I always cite this example, and I have cited it in the past. And I'm going to continue to cite Broken by Concept. It's a podcast dedicated to League of Legends, the solo queue environment, not the competitive environment. And the two people who run it, I mean, let me tell you, they talk a lot about wellness. They talk a lot about exercise, all these things. And one of their big takeaways is if you're using League of Legends as an escape, I mean, it's not going to be good for you. But if you're using it as a tool for self-improvement, and you're going to go places. And they talk about success stories on their podcast about how people realize, maybe I shouldn't be playing League. Maybe I should be focusing more on my school. And oh my gosh, look at how much happier I am. Or folks who use it as a self-improvement tool, as in, oh, I have this goal, and here I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to get to this goal. So, and that podcast is actually the inspiration for why I wanted to do this podcast, is because I was really impressed by kind of how they're in a way leading the frontier of what video games can do as far as benefiting people. And then also how we can, within this community, share how we can benefit in the same way as well.
Well,
then,
go ahead, April. I'm sorry.
I would say, so when you ask who out there is worth listening to, our friend James O'Hagan out of Wisconsin does the Academy of Esports. He's got years and years of fantastic interviews on esports, and he's really got a great, wonderful attitude about esports and education, and he's just a fantastic guy. So I would say definitely listen to him. And then also the wide world of esports out of Hawaii. There's fantastic stuff on that channel. I can post some links. But again, like Bilal said, it depends on, like, this is sort of outside looking in from us who are educators and who want to bring the space to folks who are not necessarily part of the space. I think the conversation is, happening on Discord within the industry, and they're happening in smaller groups. So those there's a lot to be said for esports, but right now I think there's not a Mind Valley for esports right now where you can get a bunch of really cool speakers about it that are gonna be, maybe that'll be who we are eventually. We'll have some really cool speakers on telling us how they cool. Game and what's coming down the line. And
I want to be the commissioner of that. I want to be like the NFL commissioner.
Right.
Yeah, but I think, so to your point, because I think when you were talking, April, you kind of reminded me about how for the longest time, the world, and when I say the world, I mean everything except video gaming, the world and then esports has always been very separate entities. Mm-hmm. So I see channels like, the Broken by Concept podcast, and even Warrior Gamer, which I know we're small and we're just starting, we're just learning, but I see us as like the bridge between the world and then just esports, because I think gamers they really hold on to their identity. I am a gamer, and they tend to sometimes separate themselves from others. And I think we're showing that no, you can do both. And you can be successful in both. And video games can be used to bring success into the world, and the world can be used to bring success into video games. It's not two separate entities. You can do it.
You're so right. I was going to say, you're so right. Like my gamers on my team at Illinois Tech, they're not going to talk to me about gaming. They're going to talk to each other. You know, I'm old and out. My job is to get funding for them. They're going to talk to each other about kills and what's exciting and what's, you know, that's where I think that conversation's really thriving in the Discords and WhatsApp, in the, you know, in the channels that they use amongst themselves. So having, and then I think like if you follow this, like we were talking about Riot Games earlier, you know, following their Instagram and seeing what they're up to and how they're interacting with their client base and how they're expanding their teams. Like that's I think a way to get a glimpse into the pro circuits, following NRG and those guys. And but I think it's an insider game right now. I mean, it could just be me who's external to it, but I think it truly is like that influencer kind of role is either when they're being real, they're just talking to each other. When they're trying to get a sponsor, or when they're trying to get a name on their jersey, then they got a whole other conversation that happens.
So I'm blown away here. Like I'm so ashamed of myself. I never thought to even look up esports coaching. I mean, this is legit. Like yeah. I have Gamer Sensei, wecoach.gg, eca.gg, bettergamer.com. And then there's this organization that I don't want to, talk good or bad about anything right now, but National Association of Esports Coaches and Directors, NAECAD. Now, look, I have built industries and been I helped build OCR, obstacle course racing. And I have seen opportunists before, and to just kind of go in, get intellectual property, lock it down, USPTO, and then just fake it till you make it to see what happens. And so I don't know. I'm sure that's happening in esports, but this seems to be like there is significant activity. And I'm trying to make Rocket League, so I was clicking on like Rocket League. I mean, these people are $30 an hour. Like that's not cheap. So it's happening.
Oh, it's happening. Coaching. So like I was saying, I got kids who have paid off their student loans because they get paid and again, it's probably not the greatest thing to put on record, but they get paid directly via PayPal for coaching, for teaching. Here's how you do this in CSGO. Here's the best way to do XYZ in Fortnite. And in addition to their coaching, that's a valid income stream for people who are really good at their game. And in addition to coaching, they do like tournament organization, or they manage. And of course, they have Patreon, and they have their Twitch channels, and they have their YouTube channels where they recast their videos that they've made of their highlight reels and that sort of thing. But really it's like Jim Kwik said, putting it all together in a way that's packageable and manageable for your life is they're honestly making it through college without financial burden on some of my esports kids.
So I have a question, and I know we're going long, but I know that NIL, name, image, and likeness, was a huge deal with NCAA. I was an NCAA athlete. And I absolutely hated the fact that I could not get gear from anybody because it was against the rules. Now, I was just trying to get some shoes, people, okay, or some Speedos or something. These people are getting Lamborghinis now because NIL was rejected, and now athletes can sell their name, image, and likeness. And so I'm curious on how this is. There's gonna be something with esports and college teams when these things start getting organized. Colleges are a business, people. Okay. They are there to make money. Almost all of them. They are like Apple. Okay. So when they find somewhere where there's money floating around that needs to be fished with the pole, they're going to enter in that zone. And so I'm curious, and you don't have to say anything official, but what you think this evolves to. Do you think there's going to be an NCAA kind of like collegiate thing that occurs with esports and gaming and name, image and likeness and stuff like that?
So Kurt Melcher, I don't know if you know Kurt, he's from Chicago. He was at Robert Morris, the first college to offer scholarships right down the road from us for esports. And when he worked for Intersport, he was actually on the team that advised the NAA, that did all the advising on what they should do about esports, basically. And what kept them out was just that, there's the money that is in esports that these kids are winning at tournaments, that the kids are winning not just coaching on their own, but the swag, the tournaments, the recognition, all of that sponsorship when they're like almost pro, like if they're in college but good enough to go pro. Those kids have lawyers. They've got, there's a lot that's going on in this space that is not regulated right now by any one overarching organization. NACE is working to sort of lay some guidelines down, but there's really, I don't see it coming just yet, because it also will have to include the gambling and fantasy and lots of other elements that are in esports right now, that would be contrary to the laws of like college basketball has to adhere to.
That's really interesting. Bilal, you want to grab something that she said? I'm very, very gambling. That is something I had not thought about.
Yeah.
So
it's huge. They're building whole stadiums in Vegas, just waiting for the right. It's huge. It's coming. It's
for gaming,
in other cultures. Yeah. And then also, in addition to that, like out of Vietnam, there are many games that are blockchain games. So there are people who kept themselves alive and earned their living because they were playing these games during COVID when they couldn't do anything else. When they couldn't work, they could feed their families playing these games. So that the finances around, and it's not just esports, but it's gaming in general, are far more complicated than, say, college baseball, college football, college basketball.
So we got to do an entire episode on this, because I'm very. we got to get some people in here that know more than what we are here, pontificating about. But like, this is really interesting to me, because if I crush in a game, like, I mean, look, I am a competitive prize money racing machine, right? I go to races. If the prize money's good, I look around on the start line. I pretty much know where I'm going to be. If I don't know anybody, I'm going to win, right? If I know a couple folks, I might be like, this might be a tough day. But like, if I'm a gamer and I've put in 5,000 hours in something, and there's prize money to be had, oh, hell yeah. Like, I will put up my entry fee of whatever it is. And like, an event for me can cost $300 or $400 or $500. I mean, hotels and all this nonsense. Good gracious. Like, a gamer can sit in his pajamas or her pajamas at home in game. They don't have to do anything and they can win the cash. So maybe we'll save this for another day, but where are those, April? Like, why is this not happening where there's multi-million-dollar prize purses with $1,000 entry fees?
So the biggest prize purses are with Dota 2 right now. It's happening. These prize purses are out there. The multi-million-dollar prize purse years ago, Booga got $3 million out of Fortnite for one day of effort. So there are definitely multi-million-dollar prize pockets. What I just popped in the chat is a game called Axie Infinity out of Vietnam, and that's not multi-million-dollar. That's a couple $100s a month, but it's a couple $100s a month that happens in an economy where that's a lot of money, where that's rent, that's food, that's everything else that you need, like throughout the Philippines. So yeah, it's definitely happening. Right now, everything's owned by the publishers, by the gaming publishers. So they're really dictating what the tournaments look like, what the prize pools look like. So there's a disparity between, the servers that are in Asia versus the servers that are in North America. And I think if we bring one of our friends from Riot on, we might be able to get a really good conversation going around this type of stuff. Because they set their prize pools and they incentivize in other ways too. A lot of my kids don't even want, they don't want physical items. They want digital currency that works within the games. So they want me to go to Amazon and get some instead of sending them, here, have a cushy little plush animal. They want Riot points, that they can buy a new axe with, or they can buy something fun with in game, or they want to buy outfits that are in game. And I think one of the things that's really happening now is that, like Fortnite, for instance, is completely gone not haywire, but like just beyond what you would expect. Like they're Jedi who can fight with Goku, who can it's like anime, Star Wars, like all of these different worlds are merging into this gaming world. But they're doing that because they know there's a lot of folks who just absolutely love Naruto or love Goku, and they're going to pay to have those skins. So they're being able, they can sell the franchises in game.
Wow.
They can sell the weapons in game. They can sell experiences in games. You can go to a concert in game and pay for that. You can go. There's a lot of monetization within the game that are at the publisher's discretion right now. So they have no reason to listen to an external body that claims that they're the rules, that it works for basketball, college basketball, and so forth, because everybody needs to play by the same rules. Not the case with gaming. The publishers get to make the rules and change the rules and negate your 90 hours of practice by changing one map and making I think one of the kids just told me today that All Might from My Hero Academia, again, I'm a big giant nerd, that All Might in Fortnite was just way too powerful. Or All for One was way too powerful in Fortnite. And they had to change it. So because the disparity, that's where AI is coming in, actually, trying to balance that the power versus who can use it versus what's fair versus what is still fun. So there's a lot of AI going into that, those calculations to decide how powerful these new players are going to be and how powerful these new weapons can be and that sort of thing. So it's a really interesting time.
Sounds unbelievably complicated. I got an exposure to this when I tried to create a competition on a fitness platform where you ride the bike in a virtual world. And it's like, hey, let's just do like a 15-mile competition, whatever. And I tell you what, the conversation with the engineers for that company blew my mind on how much people cheat and what extent they go to create algorithms that mimic their heart rate. And I mean, we just gave up because it was just it was insane. And we had a nice stint of a bunch of cheaters that would come in and cheat and everything, and we had to flush these people out. And so I can imagine the immense amount of challenges that this industry will face with that.
You hit the nail on the target. That's why Vegas is coming at this slowly, because they don't want to tank the whole industry, because people are, there's as many people trying to game the games as they are playing the games.
Yeah.
There's auto aim. There's all sorts of, bots that they can use. And there's it's a whole industry in and of itself. And actually, there's a whole branch of cybersecurity designed to combat them. So there's
Really? And wow. Yeah, I know I had to on one of these games I was fooling around with, I had to certify that I didn't have a programmable keyboard, and I had to look it up. I was like I remember these, but there are some extremely, Bilal, you can laugh at me. I mean, there are some extremely impressive programmable keyboards that'll go through 60 steps, and it's okay, I'm going to press this button. I'm going to put my guy on this corner with the scope activated looking in this thing. And that is, holy crap, that's super impressive. And I'm just wow, that's something I don't have to never had to deal. I mean, we get people who boost, they do human growth hormone and they do all this nonsense, and that those are the troubles that we have to deal with, which I'm sure is going to be some kind of thing in gaming, because I mean, I had to fight a meth head a couple months ago when he was trying to invade our neighborhood, and everything I did to this guy, he just bounced back up and just kept going. I've never seen anything like it. And I'm like, man, if this dude was in one of my races, he'd be unstoppable, so I'm sure gaming has probably people who dope. I don't know.
Yeah. It's a separate topic, but yes.
Okay, so we'll talk about that too.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I guess too, again, it leans into why do they feel so stressed and pressured that they have to do that? So there's a subset that are just truly under extreme pressure, where they feel, that my whole life is going to collapse. Again, right back to Bilal's original.
I was going to say, we're making a circle.
Full
back
circle.
to the front.
They feel their whole life's gonna collapse if they don't, if they're not in the top 3 or this competition, or let their team down. And their stats, they're being measured so carefully. I know we've talked about this before, Ken. What you measure changes, but their twitch speed, their reaction time, their thinking, it's so much faster than normal people. Well, not that they're not normal people, but they really are training themselves for superhuman skills. And it's an amazing thing to watch them even playing something as simple as Beat Saber. When my elite gamers are playing it, it's just hard not to be mesmerized by it.
It's very impressive. All right, so that was a great killer episode, way even better than I even had dreamt it could be, and I hope folks will really love what we chatted about. So I think either next week we'll talk about the doping, and what was one of the
Do you think we should get an expert on the doping to understand doping? Because my knowledge it's there, but it's not there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm pretty familiar with human performance optimization. I can talk to a little bit, but I think we'll get someone, and then the name, image, likeness kind of stuff. If we can score somebody, I think that'll be really, really good.
I mean,
content.
Kurt Milcher would be fantastic, because he really did do do you know Kurt? He did let me put his LinkedIn in here for you. He honestly did that work for NCAA. LinkedIn.
All right, hook me up with that. And then pending any questions, this will conclude Warrior Gamer Headquarters Podcast Episode 8. And Bilal, do you happen to remember, through all of your tests, all of our social media locations where people can find us?
There's only one place you need to go that has everything. WarriorGMRFoundation.org. That's it. I'm not going to give the whole spiel, the Instagram, Twitter, Discord. Just go on the website. It has everything.
Or YouTube. Right. YouTube's fun. Then you can see Ken's drawings.
That's right. Our website doesn't suck. It's actually good. So you won't have any loss aversion or buyer's remorse if you go to our website. I promise you. Okay. All right. Warrior Gamers Headquarters Podcast out.